This week on our episode, we are going to be recapping some Week 5 games. I'm not going to get through every single matchup, but I'm going to do a decent amount, ones that have good storylines and whatnot. And then we're also going to preview 3 games from this upcoming week. I'm getting this podcast out just a little bit late, so I want to give you a few nuggets for next week's games in Week 6. So let me go ahead and start with the Week 5 recaps. I'm going to start with the Jaguars versus Bills. This is going to be the Jaguars' second game in London in 2 weeks. Basically their second home there in London. They played at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium this time instead of Wembley like last week. So they're moving around UK a little bit, but the Jaguars do not have jet lag. They are used to it. Like I said, it's like their second home there. And they get the job done against the Bills. I was really thinking the Bills were going to go in there after a very good showing against the Dolphins and just whoop up on the Jaguars, honestly. But that did not happen. Looks like the Bills had a little bit of trouble adjusting, obviously, to the jet lag and whatnot moving across the pond. They just could not get a run game going whatsoever, which is a concern I had coming into the season about their team. But for the first few weeks of the season, looks like the Bills they were kind of cognizant of the fact that they couldn't run the ball a whole lot last year, and that was one of their weaknesses, and they really focused on running the ball early on in the first few weeks of the season. This one, they just could not get anything going. I think that's what the Jaguars wanted. They wanted to make the Bills one-dimensional. Once you do that, you can kind of put the pressure on Josh Allen, and like I said, he has to make some decisions and some throws that he probably otherwise wouldn't make, and that makes the Bills susceptible to turnovers and things of that nature. So the Jaguars put the pressure on the Bills, and they played a pretty decent game there. It was a little ugly. The Bills got things going late in the game there. They passed the ball pretty well at the end there because they basically knew they had to. Josh Allen kind of put the team on his back, got them kind of back in the game, but the Jaguars salted away the win with a Travis Etienne long run essentially that put them away. And so the Jaguars moved to 3-2. They're kind of back in that division in the AFC South there. The Buffalo Bills are now also 3-2. And so this is going to have some playoff implications, potentially here with, seeding if the Jaguars and the Bills end up tying with records in the AFC playoff picture, because obviously, the Jaguars have the tiebreaker now. So it's going to be interesting because if the Bills don't, obviously win the division, if the Jaguars win their division, there can be some seeding differences there between those two. But Jaguars get the job done. Trevor Lawrence bounces back. He gets the ball to Calvin Ridley a few more times in this game than he has in the past few weeks. I think he's going to be the key to that offense. Obviously, other than the fact that Travis Etienne needs to keep, continue to be good for that offense and run the ball well and catch the ball out of the backfield well, as too. So getting Calvin Ridley involved, I think, is, like I said, the key to that offense, spreading the ball around to their playmakers. Trevor Lawrence is too good of a quarterback to be dropping some of the games to these other teams that they have this season. So let's go on to the next game, Lions versus Panthers. This one, just the Panthers, winless still. Bryce Young, they're getting in game scripts where they're having to throw the ball with him. He's just a rookie, and he's just making mistakes here and there. He threw a pick in this one, and it just things are just not going well. A report comes out today from, Frank Reich has a press conference, and he essentially says more or less that David Tepper, the owner of the Panthers, is kind of meddling in, their situations, and kind of alluded to the fact that essentially he was the guy that essentially pushed the chips into the middle and said, I want Bryce Young over C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, any of the other top quarterbacks that were on the board for them at the number 1 overall pick there. They had, obviously, their pick of the litter, and they went into Bryce Young. And Frank Reich kind of alluded to the fact that David Tepper may or may not have kind of made that decision for them. The GM didn't really make it. He didn't really make it as the head coach. And he's just kind of stuck with the result here. And that is just not good news coming out of Charlotte. That is really bad when you have a head coach kind of more or less subtly calling out not the head coach, the owner of the team for essentially meddling in situations he probably otherwise shouldn't, because he's not the football guy at the end of the day. He is just a former hedge fund guy that he knows numbers and things of that nature. He's probably pretty analytical in that, fashion, but he's just not a guy that really knows football. Frank Reich definitely knows football. He's a Super Bowl winning offensive coordinator. Maybe he's not that great of a head coach. We may or may not know because he's been in 2 situations where the owners have been very, very hands-on, if you will, between the Colts and the Panthers now, where, Jim Irsay is a very hands-on owner, as well as apparently David Tepper, now that we're hearing things of this nature. So unfortunately, I mean, there was a lot of, reports obviously coming into the offseason, or going through the offseason, I should say, where it looked like the Carolina Panthers were poised to take C.J. Stroud, and then at the very last second, things kind of flipped on its head, and I think they went real conservative, went really safe with the fact that a lot of people had Bryce Young as the guy going into the offseason as the number 1 overall pick, and it has just kind of not really worked out for them right now. He looks small in the field. He's getting blown up back there with a very suspect O-line. I'm saying all this a lot. This is nothing has to do with the fact that the Lions beat the crap out of the Panthers. I mean, it kind of does, but so it looks like there's a little bit of dysfunction there in Charlotte for the Carolina Panthers, and it probably won't get any better before it gets worse. So that's very unfortunate, but the Lions keep winning, 4-1 now. They just look like a great team, honestly. Obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs didn't play in this game. Unfortunately, had a little bit of an injury. David Montgomery continues to just tote the rock. He's getting every carry, it seems like, and he's doing a good job. He never seems to fall backwards. He's a guy that always falls forwards. He's probably averaging 5 yards per carry at this point. That O-line's moving people right now, and that offense is working at a high level with Ben Johnson as the offensive coordinator. I personally, as an Eagles fan, I kind of need the Cowboys kind of get back on track here, because I have a really bad feeling that Ben Johnson could be in the head coaching candidacy this offseason. And if Mike McCarthy starts to, if the Cowboys and Mike McCarthy continue down this road of just losing to good teams and beating up on the bad ones, there may be a chance there's a head coaching change there. And I do not want Ben Johnson, a very innovative and creative guy on offense, to coordinate and be the head coach of the Cowboys next season. That's one thing I would like to avoid. So I need Mike McCarthy to kind of step it back up, kind of put them back in the playoff picture. I think they're probably still going to make it. So I don't think Jerry Jones would pull the trigger on that, which is very fortunate for me as an Eagles fan. I'd rather not have that problem. Once again, kind of just let me get back to the Lions. Lions are just good. Jared Goff playing out of his mind for, who he is. And I just think he has just improved so much the last 3-4 years since he was in Los Angeles. Really, he's just continue to get better and better every single season, and you got to be proud of him, honestly, for just sticking with it and continue to get after it and grind and get better at his craft. Next game, we have Colts versus Titans. AFC South showdown here. Kind of has, obviously division implications, potentially playoff implications here. It's very early in the season, so not necessarily like a big deal, whoever wins or loses this game, but could be in the end in the grand scheme of things. Colts pull it out. Anthony Richardson unfortunately gets hurt once again. Looks like it's going to be an AC joint sprain, I should say, in his shoulder. I think it's his throwing shoulder. So he's going to be out for a little while. Gardner Minshew will now step in and see if he can kind of keep the boat afloat for the next few weeks. I don't know how long Anthony's planning on being out. He could potentially go on IR, so you're looking at 4 games or more. But Gardner Minshew is a good backup. I think he can kind of just stabilize the ship a little bit. The Colts team is good. Shane Steichen knows how to get his playmakers the ball, and Jonathan Taylor coming back is really going to help that. Obviously, he didn't play a whole lot this past week. They're really trying to just work him back into the offense, considering the fact that he didn't really have any of a training camp. He had that ankle injury, as well as the contract dispute, which he just got paid for. So he gets his money. He gets his role back essentially as soon as he kind of gets back in game shape. And that Colts offense, when Anthony Richardson does finally come back, will look really, really good with Shane Steichen being creative on the offensive side of the ball. So yeah, they get the win there against the Titans, and they just keep rolling. They're going to be in contention, obviously, for the rest of the season as long as they can get Anthony Richardson back in a timely fashion. But let me move on to the next game here. Dolphins versus Giants. Giants team looks bad. It's bad right now. Daniel Jones leaves the game at late in the game with a neck injury, one that he says feels similar to the one he suffered in 2021, which ended his season. It was at the end of the season, though, so we don't know how long of a timetable that could be taking. But the Giants team is in trouble. The Dolphins get back on track here after a bad loss, like I said, to the Bills last week. But I mean, their offense, it looked like the greatest show on turf once again. So Dolphins bounce back. They're ready to go again. Offense looks great. Unfortunately, they did. They're going to lose Devon Achane for it looks like probably the next 4 weeks, I think he's going to be put on IR. They're going to bring Jeff Wilson Jr. back off of IR, so he's going to kind of step right back in that role. So I don't think they're going to miss much of a beat. Achane obviously was a very explosive and good running back, and it looked like he was ripping off like 10 yards a carry the past few weeks that he's been in there. But I think they're going to be fine offensively. They're just a good team. Mike McDaniel knows what he's doing. They're going to be awesome for the rest of the season. They'll make the playoffs. It just kind of is what it is. But yeah, they just beat up on a bad Giants team. Giants look like they're going down the absolute drain right now. They're circling the drain. Especially with the potential of having to start a backup at quarterback instead of Daniel Jones. Everything is just going wrong for them right now, and it's unfortunate for their fans, but they were talking a whole lot of smack this offseason about the Eagles and whatnot, and so sometimes fan bases deserve what's coming to them. So it is what it is. Steelers versus Ravens, AFC North showdown here. Big rivalry game, obviously. Always weird, tough games here. And the Pittsburgh Steelers pull it off, man. I don't know how they do it sometimes. Mike Tomlin is ridiculous. He's always got a tough, hard-nosed defense to keep his football teams in games. The offense has been very bad for the Pittsburgh Steelers as of late. Matt Canada seems like he's not a very good offensive coordinator. They finally get it done here on the back of George Pickens. Jaylen Warren has some flash plays. Obviously, Kenny Pickett got the ball to his playmakers, and they were able to finally win this game. But it was more of a story about Lamar Jackson's weapons here in this game. They had unbelievable amounts of drops in this game. Nelson Aguilar dropped a touchdown pass. It was a long, deep pass. Mark Andrews dropped a touchdown pass in this one. So did Rashad Bateman. Zay Flowers dropped a couple passes in this game where they could have went for huge gains in the game. So I think this is just a weird one-off. It's very unfortunate for the Ravens that it happened against a division rival in the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are now 2-0 in the division, where it seemed like they got outplayed by the Browns and the Ravens in the game, yet they came out on top. That's just a Mike Tomlin type win right there if you've ever seen one. So I think the Ravens will be fine. I think they'll clean up their drop issues and stuff of that nature, and they'll be fine going forward in the AFC playoff picture. Next team here, Eagles versus Rams. This matchup was a fun one. I thought the over was going to get blown off the roof there in SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, but this game was a little bit more about possession and the holding of the ball and just the pure dominance and just, I don't know, the pure will to win for the Eagles on this one. The O-line and the D-line of the Eagles destroyed this game for the LA Rams. Basically, it came down to the fact that the Eagles, I think it was like 38 minutes to 22 minutes time possession difference there. So the Eagles had the ball a whole lot more. They were able to run the ball. They were able to pass the ball and keep the clock churning on their side. And after the first half, which was a little bit ugly, 2 possessions for the Rams, 2 touchdowns. Cooper Kupp kept getting open. Puka Nacua got a touchdown there. And it was a whole lot of in-breaking routes and stuff of that nature. Sean Desai, Eagles defensive coordinator in the second half, really adjusted and got the job done in the second half. They didn't score a single other point after that. So the end result was 23-14. Eagles could have scored more. They've had some struggles in the red zone thus far this season. I think they'll probably fix it, as the season progresses. But right now, it doesn't matter. They're just bigger and better and stronger and faster and more talented than most teams in all of football. So they're going to get away with not having the greatest red zone offense in the world right now. But as they get deeper in this schedule, the Eagles' schedule becomes a gauntlet, and they're going to have to start scoring in the red zone. And I think I have confidence in Brian Johnson to get that fixed. So Eagles win. They remain 5-0 now, undefeated still. So very good for them. Very good start for them considering, the Super Bowl potential hangover and stuff of that nature. So I'm happy as a fan, and they have not played their best ball yet, and they're still 5-0. Good feeling going forward. Next game, Jets versus Broncos. This game was drunk. If you were watching any of this game on Red Zone or just watching it like as a fan, you knew that this was just a wild game. Turnovers everywhere. Special teams blunders, pick sixes and fumbles. And I don't know if there's a pick six. I know there's a scoop and score for a touchdown and whatnot, but just a wild game. Obviously, Nathaniel Hackett gets his revenge on Sean Payton because of his comments in the offseason, and he deserved to win this game, honestly. Sean Payton really dug himself in a absolute hole by the comments he made this offseason about Nathaniel Hackett, saying apparently this was like the worst coaching job he's ever seen. The players like basically got like the worst end of the stick on that deal whenever, he became the head coach of the Broncos last year. So he kind of deserved what he got when it came to this game. The Broncos are a disaster right now. Russell Wilson's not even playing that bad, and the team just keeps losing. The defense is bad. Vance Joseph, head defensive coordinator there, he is a guy that is known for blitzing and high blitzing, like numbers in general, percentages, and he's letting up touchdowns here and there. And, I mean, if Zach Wilson and the Jets offense can score on you, other than the fact that Breece Hall is very, very good at football, you should be kind of ashamed of yourself at this point. I mean, it's 2 weeks in a row, though. I will say that the Jets offense has looked better with Zach Wilson there. They played pretty good against the Kansas City Chiefs and then this week against the Broncos. But either way, we'll see what the Eagles do against this Jets team in general. But I would be shocked if the Eagles don't kind of dominate the game this next Sunday, I should say. But yeah, Jets beat the Broncos. Just a funny storyline there that obviously Nathaniel Hackett gets the win over Sean Payton, who talked crap about him. And then after the game, obviously Robert Saleh came up to Sean Payton to do their handshake that everybody does after games, and he said, "Stay humble," which I thought was hilarious and just a complete dunk on him. Let's move forward. We have Chiefs versus Vikings. This one, had some implications when it comes to the fact that, the Chiefs have to stay on track here to stay in competition with all the other good teams in the AFC. Obviously, they keep winning here, which is good for them. Offense is looking a little suspect as of late. Obviously, it's the Travis Kelce show there, and he gets hurt a little bit in this game, has a little bit of low ankle sprain, I should say. So I don't know if he's going to be out for any time period going forward. He may miss this next game. But then the Vikings obviously lose this game, a big one. They also lose Justin Jefferson. He's going on IR to a hamstring injury here. So Vikings, this could be as close as they're ever going to be to potentially fire sailing at the trade deadline here. They could ship a bunch of people off that, just contracts they don't want to pay people going forward, stuff of that nature. So with the Vikings being as bad as they are and how many good players they have, this is going to be very interesting going to the trade deadline if they start shipping off guys like Harrison Smith and maybe even like Kirk Cousins. I mean, you never know what can happen to the trade deadline. So Chiefs get the win. Vikings are still bad. Crazy just circumstance from what was going on last year. They went 13-4 last year, which was crazy, and this year they're just terrible. But yeah, let's just move on to the next one. The San Francisco 49ers versus the Cowboys. Sunday Night Football. Everybody was watching this game. This was like the game of the year that everybody's waiting for thus far in the season, and it turned out to be a complete stinker for the Cowboys. The Cowboys didn't even come to compete, really. 49ers have their number. Dak Prescott cannot play against this 49ers defense. He threw 3 picks in this game, threw 2 picks the last time they played him in the playoffs. And there's a lot going on and going wrong with the Cowboys offense in general, and the team in general. So let me start with the fact that Dak Prescott is a guy that I don't think is going to carry you without a run game, without a good defense. On top of that, in the offense he's running, in Mike McCarthy's offense, it looks like it's a whole lot of getting the ball out of your hand quickly, short passes to try to open up a few shots down the field later in the game when the defense kind of starts to get closer to the line of scrimmage because you've killed the short passing game so much. That's when he wants to take shots. It's later in the game. But if you can't get anything going because of that, and this is like the wrong defense to do that type of thing to. A short pass for the 49ers is something that they welcome. They would rather they'd rather you go short than deep on them because their corners and stuff of that nature just do not have it. And honestly, at this point, the Cowboys defense also, they just don't have big people. They get pushed around in the run game. Christian McCaffrey didn't have a great game, but it didn't matter because Brock Purdy was getting the job done, throwing to George Kittle and everybody like that. So Cowboys are kind of in shambles right now. Obviously, they didn't show up against a team that they thought they were in contention with. They thought they were level with in the NFC. And the 49ers move on to 5-0 just like the Eagles do. This is going to be another collision course potentially for the NFC Championship game. Obviously, the Eagles still have to get through a regular season where they play the Cowboys twice. They also do play the 49ers in Philadelphia this season, later in the season. So it's going to be a crazy end of the season schedule for the Eagles. It's going to be a huge one for the 49ers, and the Cowboys are just looking to crawl their way back into contention by continuing to win some games moving forward. But they have problems. They got to fix them. I don't know if they're going to. I don't trust Mike McCarthy as a head coach. I don't trust Dak Prescott as a quarterback right now to carry a team. And I don't know if the Cowboys defense is as good as people expect them to be, especially when Trevon Diggs went down. The defense is fast, but it's just not big. They can get pushed around. And a lot of these NFC contenders have the O-lines, the D-lines to get it done on both sides of the ball. So moving forward, it's going to be interesting for the Cowboys and the 49ers and the Eagles and everybody else in contention at NFC, like the Detroit Lions, the Seattle Seahawks, teams of that nature. That's pretty much it for the Week 5 recap. Now I'm going to talk about a couple of teams I'm going to have my eye on going into Week 6 here. Seahawks versus Bengals. This is Bengals -3, so the point spread is at 3. The Bengals are at home here. This is going to be a very interesting game. Seahawks have looked up and down. They look better, obviously, against a bad Giants team this past week, but I don't know how much stock you can really put into that. Obviously, it's the Giants. And then, obviously, the Bengals have gotten off to a bad start. They do, finally get a few wins under their belt here. They beat the Cardinals this past week, and Joe Burrow looked much better than he has all season. He finally was getting the ball to Jamar Chase. They pretty much were just spamming that connection the entire game, and it worked out for them. If you had Jamar Chase in fantasy, you were a very happy camper. But this is going to be an interesting one. I think I am going to go with the Bengals, and I would probably take the points. I'd be more comfortable with money line at this point for the Bengals because they're just so up and down. But the Seahawks are so up and down as well, so it's just going to be a good game. I feel like this is going to be one that people should keep their eye on. I'm definitely going to as well. Next one, Colts versus Jaguars, AFC South showdown again. Like I said, Colts will be starting Gardner Minshew in this one. Jaguars coming off a good and a big win against the Bills in London. Jaguars are going to want to stamp themselves as, the AFC South, I guess, favorite going forward. And so if they can get basically 2 wins against the Colts because they beat the Colts in week 1, if they can go ahead and go up 2-0 on the Colts, who I think are the next team kind of in line for contention in the AFC South, that's going to be huge for their chances of winning the AFC South. So Jaguars, they're favored by 4.5 in this one thus far, and I don't know. Those AFC South games are so tricky. They know Gardner Minshew is going to start in this one, so they might scheme up different things on defense to try to mess with him because he's just not Anthony Richardson. But I don't know. I think I would go Jaguars money line in this one too. I feel good about the Jaguars, stamping themselves as the AFC South favorite in this one, but the points a little bit too much for a division rivalry game like that one. Next one, Cowboys versus Chargers. This one's in LA. The Chargers are not favored. The spread is 2. Cowboys are -2 in this one. So this is going to be a very interesting one. I think I would go with the Cowboys and the points here. I think the Cowboys can bounce back in a big way here. They're going to be pissed off, obviously, about the situation that happened on Sunday Night Football with the 49ers. A lot of people are probably going to go the opposite direction because they think they're probably going to be demoralized. But I think this is going to incite some just a spark in them that they're going to want to go ahead and get back on track against a team that they've had pretty good, a track record of beating in the past, especially Justin Herbert, which is really odd. Obviously, this is also a Kellen Moore offensive coordinator revenge game against the Cowboys. It's going to be interesting to see that. Obviously, Mike McCarthy more or less kind of fired Kellen Moore, and then he goes to the Chargers. Their offense looks pretty solid. Cowboys' offense has been up and down thus far this season. And it's going to be interesting going forward, but I think I like the Cowboys and that one to bounce back. That's pretty much it for this episode of Coordinated Chaos. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Please follow on all the socials and everything like that. Keep the notifications on so you can see when I post videos on those things as well. I appreciate everybody tuning in once again, and we will talk to you next week. Peace.